I am in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, outside of the Milwaukee Art Museum. This is supposed to be a really amazing art museum. I've never been here before, but the real showpiece is the building itself. The museum is located right on the lakefront of Lake Michigan. Across from the museum, you can see the skyline of Milwaukee, so this place is in a perfect location. Beyond this telescope, you can get a good view of the wingspan as you head into the museum. This part of the museum is the Quadracci Pavilion, which was finished in 2001. It was designed by Santiago Calatrava, who also designed the Oculus in New York City and the City of Arts and Sciences in Valencia, Spain. As you can see, this building has very distinctive wings. The wingspan is 217 feet across. They are called brise-soleil, and they can expand like they are now, or fold up completely like they do at night and during inclement weather. Once inside, you enter the central vestibule, which is absolutely stunning. You can view Lake Michigan out of the windows. To add to the incredible atmosphere in here, there is some Chihuly glass. This is Alexander Calder's red, black, and blue mobile from 1968. The actual galleries are inside of a different building that you walk to through this corridor. First, they have an Egyptian mummy coffin from the late dynastic period. This was made for a man named Pedusiri, whose mummy didn't make it. It apparently was not in here. There's some more Egyptian antiquities. This is a broken Roman athlete's torso and a part of his leg. This is a Gothic Madonna and Child from 1350 Italy. There's some really cool decorative arts. This Madonna and Child was made by Francesco Bacchini in the 15th century. There's a Dutch triptych behind that glass spire. There are some Dutch portraits of a wealthy married couple. Portraits were a big way of displaying wealth and status in the Netherlands during this time. This is a portrait of Alexander van der Capellen. He was an influential Dutch politician and an advisor to Prince Frederick Hendrik, leader of the Dutch Republic. That is an Italian bust of a nobleman from 1556. Here's a bunch of Renaissance era portraiture. That was a fairly new thing in Europe at the time, secular artwork. This is a triple profile portrait by Lucas de Heer from 1570. These guys look very feminine in this portrait, and they might be King Henry III's mignons, or his male favorites. This is the Intercession of the Virgin, made by Luca Giordano in 1660. This painting was half of an altarpiece originally commissioned for a church in Madrid that was destroyed in the 19th century, but this survived. Saint Sebastian is in this painting, you can tell by the arrow going through his thigh. This is Christ Before the High Priest, a Dutch painting from 1633. This haunting painting depicts Saint Francis by Francisco de Zurbaran. The Death of Phocion by Charles Brocas. This painting does show the transition from Rococo to Neoclassicism. Thomas Whitcomb's Destruction by Night of the Spanish batteries before Gibraltar. This is an 18th century Rococo French room. Good old English portraiture. There's some knight's armor. This is a modern still life, not in painted form or from Europe. This laid table utilizes glass, and that is supposed to represent the frailty of life. Antonio Balestra's The Meeting of Telemachus and Calypso. There's a lot of animals in this one. The paintings so close together on that wall represent the old-fashioned art museum, where things were a lot less spread out. This museum was founded in its original form in 1888. This is Saint Monica in a Landscape by Alexandra Cabanel from 1845. The Roman amateur here was hung in Milwaukee's Pfister Hotel in the 1800s. I'm not sure if these count as steins, but they are German cookie jars, for lack of a better term. This painting is an example of German realism, depicting a local gathering. These are petit posters by Jules Cheret of Le Courrier, a weekly illustrated magazine in the 1890s. This is The Gathering of Wildflowers by William Mayer Chase, depicting his daughters in a flower field in Long Island. This is called Hark the Lark by Winslow Homer. Here these very young ladies are momentarily stopping their labor due to the joyous sounds of a songbird. This room includes original works of the Layton Art Gallery, the predecessor to the Milwaukee Art Museum that was founded in 1888, and it is in this dramatic salon style. This is Le Mont Aussi by Jean-Baptiste Camille Corot. Now we're getting into the French Impressionists. And here they have an actual painted plaster cast of Auguste Rodin's original clay model of The Kiss, one of his most famous works. The Monet in the background is Waterloo Bridge, with a sunlight effect. This 1903 painting is one of many repetitive study paintings Monet did of the Waterloo Bridge from the same angle, but in each one he would use a different light and color effect. This is The Three Cuirassiers by Toulouse-Lautrec. This is The Sunset at Rouen by Camille Pissarro. The View of Bougival by Pierre-Auguste Renoir in 1873. This large ceramic head of Honoré de Balzac was made by Renoir. I think this is the first ceramic or sculpture work I've seen of his. An original dancer sculpture by Edgar Degas. This is an Arab encampment by Eugene Delacroix. In 1832, Delacroix traveled to northern Africa and became fascinated with the Arab life, and he ended up doing a lot of art about Islamic Africa. The Two Majesties by Jean-Léon Gérôme, perhaps the inspiration of the Lion King. This is a cast of Augustus Saint-Gaudens' The Pilgrim. Here's a bunch of 19th century and early 20th century furnishings. There's a Frank Lloyd Wright stained glass window and some furniture he designed. Here are some colonial furnishings and decorative arts. The pitcher and porringer were made by none other than Paul Revere, who was by trade a silversmith. This is by one of the great colonial American artists, Benjamin West. It depicts the restoration of the English monarchy with Charles II in 1660. Portraits of John and Margaret Bayard, lifelong friends of colonial portraitist Charles Willson Peale. Peale also made this portrait of Elizabeth McClure, who was from England and was sent to America to marry Baltimore trader Mordecai Gist. A portrait of Eliza Susan Morton by Gilbert Stuart. Morton was the daughter of a prominent Massachusetts family, and she went on to marry Josiah Quincy, the mayor of Boston and later president of Harvard University. This beautiful room was relocated to the museum from a very nice home. These are portraits by Robert Henri, a famed American painter who spent a lot of his time in Spain and had a lot of Spanish influences. This is an early work of Thomas Cole, one of the great Hudson River School artists, and it's called Storm in the Wilderness. These are the Wind River Mountains of Nebraska Territory, present-day Wyoming, by Albert Bierstadt. 3 Mile Harbor in Long Island by Thomas Moran. This is called A Passing Shower by Frederick Edwin Church, depicting Mount Desert Island of Maine. This is Minneopa Falls by Robert S. Duncanson, a well-known African-American artist in the mid-19th century. He was from Cincinnati, but he stayed up in Minnesota during the Civil War for safety. This is an entrapped otter by the famed naturalist John James Audubon. This is a landscape with mountains and a river by Henry Vianden. Vianden was the first professional landscape painter in Wisconsin. There's one of many bronze casts of Frederick Remington's Bronco Buster. These actually aren't that rare, and they're at about every major art museum in America. Thomas Hill made this incredible landscape of the Merced River in Yosemite in 1896. This is a painting by Norman Rockwell called The Faithful Shopper. This image appeared on the Saturday Evening Post in 1924. This is Black Dome with Snow 2 by Georgia O'Keeffe. It is a painting of her Ghost Ranch home in New Mexico. Here are some early 20th century modernist works. Pierre Bonnard's Girl in a Straw Hat. A view of Bonnard's studio. The King's Jester by Yao Miro. This is a fragment for a larger composition that was made by Vasily Kandinsky. A Still Life with Flowers by Yao Miro. The Hot-Blooded Girl by Paul Klee in 1938. The Horseman by Marc Chagall. This is called The Cock of the Liberation by Pablo Picasso, painted in 1944 during World War II. Georges Braque's In Dry Dock. Back when single-color canvases were revolutionary, you could get your work into major institutions. This is a work by Jean Dubuffet called Court les Rues. A work by Mark Rothko. The Milwaukee Art Museum actually has one of the largest collections of Georgia O'Keeffe's works. In fact, they have a whole room here full of her stuff. She was originally born in Sun Prairie, Wisconsin on November 15th, 1887. She was most well known for her modernist paintings of flowers and landscapes of New Mexico, which is where she spent most of her latter years. This is a Brillo box by Andy Warhol. This is a prime example of his pop art, which represented consumer culture. When he debuted all of his Brillo boxes, he had them stacked floor to ceiling at a New York gallery. Most people didn't get it. These are rather unique Campbell's soup cans by Warhol. Looks like these got a color filter. Roy Lichtenstein's Water Lily Pond with Reflections from 1992. This is a classic Lichtenstein work called Crying Girl, made in 1964. This is interesting. Much of the canvas is a mirror reflecting the gallery and me. This is a very realistic janitor by Dwayne Hansen. I did legitimately think this was a person when I first walked in. This museum has a really strong contemporary art collection. I can't provide too much narration because it's all a lot less straightforward than the other stuff. That's a Frank Stella. That's just as trippy as it appears on camera in person. There's a lot of white rocks falling from the ceiling. This is a Kehinde Wiley portrait of Saint Dionysius from 2006. I really like Wiley's portraits because they're really realistic, but they really pop, especially because of the backgrounds. This wood wheel thing is called M by Robert Indiana, and the 76 back there is also a painting by Robert Indiana. The museum got a hold of one of his classic love sculptures, and I found out they placed it outside the museum on the lakefront 3 days after I visited. These are modern and contemporary furnishings. This is the creepiest thing here at the museum.
I make friends easily.
So this place is awesome. What a great collection. Outside the museum, there is a statue of President Abraham Lincoln, and it's in a really cool location with the Art Museum's wingspan, Lake Michigan, and the Milwaukee skyline in the background. It's a 10'6" statue by Gaetano Cesare in 1934, and it depicts young beardless Abe. The statue is at the War Memorial Center building next to the Milwaukee Art Museum, and it was designed by Eero Saarinen, and it has a really cool eternal flame fountain. Alright, so that was the Milwaukee Art Museum. Very awesome art museum, and the building is just incredible. I feel like this video, I filmed a few other videos here in Milwaukee, and I have a bunch of videos at art museums across the United States, so please go check those videos out, and thanks for watching.